thanks a million for doing this. It's great to get to talk to you.
Yeah, man.
So we were actually supposed to do this a long time ago.
May 9th.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that was from the email. I was like, fuck, how do you remember that? What a
Yeah, I
loser.
don't have that great a
That
memory.
makes sense. Yeah, so we were supposed to talk then, and then you got injured.
Yeah.
And that was post quarterfinals, pre semifinals, isn't that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 2 weeks-ish before Syndicate.
Yeah, we'll get on to sport and all that kind of stuff and injury and everything later on, but it is great to finally get to talk to you. You drink a lot of Paper Street, do you?
Yeah, I love it.
How did that come through, like listening and being on Savans? Is that how that interest started?
Yeah, me and Gabe connected through being on the Sevan Podcast. You know, he reached out to me after quarterfinals, and just kind of started a relationship. He's a really cool guy, Gabe.
Yeah, he is cool. He sent me a box of stuff and hasn't gotten here yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume it'll just have sprouted leaves by the time it arrives. He texted me today, or he messaged me today, and he was like, "Oh, has it come?" And I said, "No, I assume customs are just helping themselves to a few cups first before they pass it along the way."
A lot of stuff. You know, he sent me some shirts that I was going to wear initially at semifinals before I got hurt, and then I got them like a week and a half after my semifinal had happened. So I think I think it's just a mail carrier issue, USPS or.
Yeah. I bought a Hiller shirt and a No Plan B shirt off Vindicate there the other day, like last week.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, actually quite cheap. Like it's actually like it's reasonable and the shipping is reasonable, whatever. And then I got an email yesterday saying, you owe customs. Oh, fuck sake. Like anytime you buy, if I buy anything from America, it's like, oh, this is pretty good value. Like, geez, t-shirts in America are actually pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And then when it's just the day or 2 days before it comes, so not only it's a double whammy. You have to pay like somewhere between €7 and €15 or whatever on taxes, but then it delays the delivery by like 2 days because they're like, oh, now he's paid his thing. Now we can release the package, and it starts the whole thing. So. Yeah, I'm just spending the week waiting on that stuff to come, really. So what is it? Do you like the Paper Street coffee because it's free or because it's nice coffee?
I like it because it's free, but it is really good coffee. The Tyler, the dark roast is really good, but I also like the lighter roast. My girlfriend likes dark roast a lot, and my mom as well, and they've been drinking that one. And I'm a big fan.
How do you make it?
I do pour over.
Oh, okay. What do you use for pour over?
A Chemex. So I have a Chemex, and then the Chemex natural coffee filters, the brown ones.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then I just have some shitty Amazon grinder. I don't have like a nice grinder.
Yeah, I have like a Sage barista. I think it's like Breville barista, the American equivalent, and I have an origami and a Chemex.
Oh, nice.
And I use the origami a lot. It's just like a small little 1 cup. And I got a grinder for Christmas off my brother and sister-in-law. Well, no, my brother-in-law and his wife, because they'd be brother and sister and married to each other otherwise. But they gave me a grinder, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And they were like, oh, it's a re-gift now. Like, we had it and we never use it, so you can just have it. And it's, that IZ espresso. So it's like, it's a properly good grinder. But the thing about it is, it was literally just a grinder with nothing with it. And I don't know what it was set at when they gave it to me. So after about 3 weeks of trying to get used to it, I just brought it into a coffee shop and I was like, can you just set this for origami, just a generic like grind level, and then just give it back to me? And he was at it he said he was doing it for about 4 hours trying to get it right, that he was just going like one click, and then because he had no idea himself, he used a Commandante or whatever. But yeah, no, that's the only reason I have a good grinder is because it was a gift, because they're fucking crazy expensive.
They are. So I just use this. I don't even know what, it's not a brand you would know. It's like some piece of shit
Is it like a hand grinder or is it like a electric?
It's an electric grinder. Yeah.
Oh, is it like one of the spice ones where you push down?
Yeah, it has this lid that you twist off, and then you can open at the top. You put your beans in,
yeah.
you twist it on, you just hold the button. You set it on your like grind setting, and the
Yeah.
grind settings are like they're like dumb. They're like 8 to 12 cups. That's the grind setting. How many cups you want? So it's I just eyeball it. I don't know if I'm doing it right. The
Surely
coffee tastes good.
Yeah, surely setting the cup amount will be based on how many beans you're putting in rather than what the grind size be. Yeah, okay. So I became aware of you first through Sevan's podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So I messaged you about this originally ages ago, where I was training. I was kind of doing runs for a half marathon that I never ended up doing because I got COVID, like the 3 days before it or something. But I will do it, like eventually. But I was listening to your episode with him on multiple runs because it was like a 7-hour episode or whatever. But like when you, so how did you blip on his radar, do you think? Like how did he end up reaching out to you? What happened that caused that?
I think it was initially because will you give me 1 second? My dog's scratching at the door.
Yeah.
Sorry. Let me just put her out. So it was before Granite Games 2021. So before last year's semifinals, Jason won the MAC, and I guess they were interviewing him, and Sevan asked him about training partners, and he threw my name out there, and kind of hyped me up a little bit. And then I think I went on with Sevan before Granite Games, maybe. Yeah. I can't remember if it was before Granite Games or after. But then when I qualified for the last chance, I definitely went on. And then when I took 4th in the last chance, I went on again, I believe.
Yeah. And like, so those kind of ones were like, not like chit chat, but the one that you did, like February, maybe this year,
more recently.
Yeah. That one was like a deep dive of, like, say the first few, like when you go on, are you nervous when you go on first, when you're on a show? And it's like, I suppose he's a big deal in CrossFit, I suppose.
I was a little nervous on the first one. I think what I was more nervous about was I saw Jason win the MAC, and then he was kind of talking me up. And so I felt more pressure more than anything. So not necessarily nervous to talk about myself, but more nervous of, am I going to live up to that?
Yeah. And then when the other one, like when the more recent one came or was being planned, did you know that was what, like, was it like, okay, we're going to go into like your childhood and addiction and everything else, or did that just organically come up?
I kind of wanted it to go there. Just because I felt like that's a pretty important part of who I am, and we hadn't really gone there in the last episode. You know, in the previous episodes, I felt like they stayed around CrossFit, which for sure is important to me. But I felt like whereas some other athletes, you kind of got to know who they were. It didn't quite get to that point for me.
Yeah.
And so I wanted it to go there, and I'm not really nervous about that. I'm pretty open with that stuff.
Have you always been like that?
Yeah, so. I got sober pretty young, and I never was the type to kind of like hide that. It was impossible just because I got sober so young. Like everyone just knew. So it was something that I've always just been open about.
And what did you get sober from?
Some hard drugs like opiates, pills, but mostly smoking weed, alcohol, some party drugs. I wouldn't really classify myself as like a garbage head, like someone who really did everything, but I tried a number of things. But mostly alcohol and weed. Some opiates like Oxycontin, stuff like that.
And is it was it like that, you know, the classic thing, because I have no experience with addiction at all. But is it like that classic thing you hear of, like numbing things that are around you? Is that why you're doing it, or was it like, because it's from hearing you talk about your dad and stuff, it sounded like there's at least part of it is probably genetic as well, is it, or like learned behavior, I suppose, or
It's so weird. Every time I try to answer that question for myself, is it genetic or is it learned behavior? I mean, it's impossible. If they could prove one of them, if they could prove any of it, that it would be proven at this point. But I feel in my gut, I guess intuitively, that more than anything, it's learned behavior. Maybe perhaps genetically, I'm more predisposed to that personality type to just be so obsessive. But there are a lot of people who are obsessive in positive ways. And I think that is the part that's learned. Like I see the obsessive behavior centered around drugs, alcohol, just interpersonal relationships, and how codependency, all that kind of shit that gets wrapped up in that kind of lifestyle. And I think that is learned. And I think the personality type, just whether or not you're predisposed to it more than someone else. But I think, what was your question before that? You said nature versus nurture is where we were at now. Right before that, you asked something.
Is it like the classic like numbing? Is that why?
Yeah. That's tough. It maybe doesn't begin that way.
Yeah.
I didn't have some crazy bad childhood. Some people go through some really fucked up shit, and I did not go through the worst stuff. And to start, I just kind of liked it. I think from a young age, I felt a little different or inadequate to a degree. I think a lot of drug addicts feel that way, or alcoholics feel that way, either or, same. Inadequate in terms of uncomfortable in their own skin, not sure of who they are, insecure, whatever the case may be, all of the above. And that high or getting drunk kind of allows you to escape that constant questioning yourself in your mind. Am I doing the right thing? Am I saying the right things? Am I hanging out with the right people? Am I cool enough? Do my parents love me? And, whatever the case may be.
What age were you then when you started?
When I started, I had my first drink really young, like 5 or 6 years old. But I didn't. Yeah.
How did that happen?
I was with my dad, and I was like, we were visiting some family in Florida, and we were on their farm, and it was really hot, like 110 degrees. And I kept whining about being thirsty, and we didn't have anything to drink except my dad was drinking at the time. And so he just kind of put it in my hand and was like, would you shut up? And I drank it, and not a lot of it.
I think it's probably learned behavior. I think
exactly.
If that one example is anything to go by, he literally put a drink in your hand when you were 5 or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember it tasting so bad, and I was like, that's gross. I don't know why anyone would ever do that. And then I grew up with some kids that I was really close with, and his older brother was a drug dealer, and I got high with him, I think when I was 11. Yeah, well, I pretended. We smoked weed, and he rolled this blunt. It was like really, really loose, and he got high, and so I thought that I needed to pretend to be high and to be cool with him, and that was the first time I smoked, and I just started doing it more frequently and more frequently and more frequently, and then, especially at that age, the more frequently you're doing it, the more nefarious means you have to use to kind of acquire these things, because I'm not working a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So I think that starts a whole other cycle where you're doing things that aren't good to get what you want to get and get high. And so you're feeling bad about yourself for doing those things. And then you're getting high to forget about how you're feeling. And then you need to do those things again to get high. It's just a rotten cycle.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, it's so, because it's like, and as you say, like, worse things happen, and there's worse people in worse scenarios and stuff. But like, it's hard not to be like, God, I was so fucking privileged that I never came across, and not even like I never came across anything like that, but I don't think anyone I know has ever come across. You know what I mean? Like that. It's like it's probably 5 degrees removed.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's fucking insane. Like that's, so I have a 2-year-old, so that would be like in 3 years' time, me handing her a beer and telling
that's
her
pretty crazy,
isn't it? Fucking insane. Okay, and how many years sober did you say you are now?
10.
And is there any like wobbles or any like, say, because obviously you've had stressful moments, like especially recently you got injured, and I'm sure with just coaching and training in general, there's
Yeah.
moments, or is it that obsessive thing that you talk about where once you found CrossFit, it was just like, fuck it, I'm fine?
I wouldn't say once I found CrossFit, it was fuck it, I was fine. I went to 12-step meetings early on, and that changed my life in a huge way. And I found CrossFit after that. I think at this point, I don't think you're ever really, as someone who's sober, far away from a relapse. Like it's not really, I wouldn't even, time is important. Like how long you have sober is important to a degree, because you're just having life experience as someone who's sober. And if I have 10 years of life experience not relapsing, that's a little different than having 10 days of life experience not relapsing. That being said, if you're not being a good person, or if you're not living a principled lifestyle or a spiritual lifestyle, you're not, like, that's in my opinion what separates you most from a relapse is your spiritual condition, rather your sobriety time. So that being said, have I had wobbly moments? I haven't had a moment in a very long I can't remember, to be honest, the last time I wanted to get high or get drunk, and that's definitely a good thing. I'm grateful for that. I really can't remember. Even early on. I used nicotine for a while before I found CrossFit, and into like chewing tobacco an initial period of time when I had first started CrossFit. And that honestly recently is more that for whatever reason, I've had cravings for that recently, more than anything.
Is chewing tobacco like, is that maybe we do have that here, but I've never seen it. I've only ever seen that in like cowboy movies where they spit into the bucket.
Yeah, I'm saying chewing tobacco, like dip, like snuff. Chewing tobacco is like the big stuff, like the big leaves.
Snuff is like the little,
you take a pinch
cube.
and
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Okay. And does that burn your mouth or anything? No.
It gives you a little tingle. There's fiberglass in it. It's terrible for you.
There's fiberglass in it.
Yes.
Why is there fiberglass in it?
Because it cuts your lip. It makes little micro cuts in your gums that the nicotine can seep into your bloodstream.
Is that true though? Or is that like, remember that Goldschlager drink that was like had shards of gold in it, so it cuts your throat so the alcohol absorbs faster?
I'm pretty sure it's true. I mean, someone will look it up. I'm pretty sure I looked it up, and it's definitely true. For a long, I mean, I dipped when I first got sober. I smoked a little, and then I switched to dip because I got really into exercise. And then I started doing CrossFit like a lot, and I was finding like, man, I probably would be a little better off without this. And cancer is not cool, so I didn't, it'd be nice to not have that.
I think ingesting fiberglass is bad, as far as
probably terrible for you.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting because I remember hearing Sevan talk about. He was like, if you smoke once, it's just real estate in your head, like where like it never go, and it's incredibly true. So I smoked like cigarettes, and I stopped like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And now most of the time, if I say, my dad told me this when I was younger as well, and I kind of never got it, but he used to smoke and he gave up. And I was like, I remember asking him, like, are you ever like tempted, or have you ever? And he was like, no. And he made a point of like, if you can see it coming towards you, it's disgusting and whatever else. But he was like, sometimes it just like wafts from behind your shoulder and you're not prepared for it. And you're not like, you haven't psyched yourself up subconsciously for like, oh, fucking disgusting cigarette smoke coming towards me. And it just kind of hits your nose. And he was like, that's when you're like, oh God, I'd love one. And then you have to like snap yourself out of it. And it's so accurate. Like I was on holidays recently and someone was smoking, and there's a different smell for the very first puff. That's like when it's just lit, there's a different smell to that, to all the rest of it. And I was instantly like transported back to like being in my aunt's kitchen when I was like 6, being like, oh, that smells really nice. And then I was like, all the times I smoke like flashed through my head, and I had to like stop. I had to stop myself thinking, God, I'd love one of them to be like, no, you asshole, you have kids, you have, like all these like.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. It's once you do something, and I can't like that's not even really comparable to what you're talking about. It was the closest point of reference I think I have to. It's just crazy how it just never goes away, I think.
Yeah, and I will say nicotine. I mean, it is so addicting and really hard to quit. And I think what makes me struggle with nicotine more than the hard drugs or the weed and the alcohol is I have a lot of definitive evidence as to what happens to me when I get high or get drunk and how that's really negative. And the negative effects of like chewing tobacco are not that hard. It's like, it's expensive. I know that down the road, I would probably have negative health benefits.
Yeah.
But right now, in the moment, a dip wouldn't be so bad. that's
But even
the
it's
hard.
like if you did like relapse, I mean, you stand to lose a lot. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like your relationship, your fitness, your business, like you stand to lose an awful lot. Whereas if you smoke a cigarette, it's like
you don't stand to lose much.
you know, like it's not as slippery a slope. It's not like everything's gonna burn well, unless you fall asleep with it in your mouth or whatever. But it's not, like it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part. That I think that's what's harder about nicotine. But it's still terrible for you, and it's not really conducive to the lifestyle that I want to live.
Yeah. So more recently then on Sevan's show, you started doing like expert drop-ins with, say, you and JR and Brian and Hiller and whoever else. So you've gone from, I remember recently enough you were on it, and I'd say you said like 3 sentences the entire time you're on it. And then more recently you're like very boisterous, very like you'll stand your ground, you're not afraid to give an opinion, you'll interrupt people and give your opinion, which is good. Like they're all positive things. Is that a case of like learning on the job, like where you were on it and then after you finished you were like, oh, I should have done better, I could have done better, and like or is it a case of you're just getting more comfortable at doing it?
I think more than anything, it's the topic of the show, but also getting more comfortable. I think when I'm really comfortable with people, maybe to a fault, I can interrupt. Like I can try to speak over almost too much, and so I think at times I need to remember to just rein it in a little. But I remember I did the news show with James Hobart and Sevan, and like it was bad. I think that's the one where I didn't say much and people were crushing me in the comments. And I just think the topics, I wasn't necessarily prepared for that show, and not necessarily super excited about a lot of the topics. I was excited to be on the show for sure, but not necessarily excited about the material we'd be discussing. Whereas when we talk about CrossFit Games workouts or some of the last chance qualifier stuff, programming, I like talking about workouts a lot. I don't necessarily like a whole, like it's not my favorite thing to talk about athletes. I don't mind talking to athletes, but it's not my favorite thing talking about athletes or speculating.
Is that because you are one?
I think so. And yeah, it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch other competitors, not in a negative way or a jealous way, do well because I want to be there. And then it's also hard to speculate on their abilities in certain workouts and whatnot. Because I feel like it's easy for me to sit behind a screen and be like, I don't think they can do that, or I think they can, or whatever, or I think there are limitations here or there.
Is there a party that's like, I don't want to say that he's shit at ring muscle ups and then be in a lane next to him next year doing ring muscle ups, and like you don't want to give fuel to anyone or that kind of thing as well?
I don't know about to a degree. I think initially you're on the right track with that statement, but I don't think it's because I'm scared to give them fuel. I just think that it's just not a good look. Just
like, hey, you're the guy who said I'd be shit at that kind of thing.
Muscle ups, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Like I'm not gonna. I wouldn't. I wouldn't be worried about talking about muscle ups to anyone because I'm really good at them. But I'm not gonna go and talk shit about geese like clean and jerk. I think I don't really think about giving anyone fuel or not. I think if an athlete's looking for a chip, they can find one pretty easily anywhere they look.
And is it hard? Is it hard to talk about, like, say, I'm trying to think of things that have been talked about recently. So, like, say, remember Chandler Smith at Granite. Things didn't go to plan, and then I remember on a few of the shows. I'm not sure if it was a show that you were on or not, to be honest, but I assume it was because you're on a lot around then. But they were talking about, like, what happened to him and, like, Ben Bergeron, and is that the right place to be, and all this kind of stuff. And, like, I kind of feel like it's a type of environment where it could be easy to forget where you are and what you're doing and who's watching, and how anything you say could be taken and, like, just screen grabbed and shared or whatever, and even taken out of context. Is it hard talking about, like, is it easier to talk about positive stuff when it comes to athletes rather than negative stuff? Like, is it easier to say, like, oh, he's doing great and he's got a shot at top 5, rather than saying that guy's fucked, like, his coach doesn't know what's going on, and it's like he's obviously worse than he was last year. Look at his times compared to last year. He's obviously on the decline or whatever.
I don't know that one's easier than the other, and I think that I try to be really authentic. And so I don't think too hard or worry too much about things being taken out of context, because I also am not, like, speaking on topics that are, like, super controversial. Like, I'm not on Sevan's show talking about abortion or, like, racism. So I'm not, and those are just two examples of things that get people fired up. And I'm not making comments on stuff like that. So I'm not, I guess, I'm not consistently thinking, like, man, I hope someone's not taking what I'm saying out of context. And I think I have been hard on some people and hard on some organizations, and definitely hard on some of the event organizers and their programming. And I'm okay with that, because at the same time, it's the podcast like that is long form and it's opinionated, and I think people should be aware of that when they're watching Sevan's podcast. Like, they're like, this isn't 60 minutes. We're talking shit to a degree. A lot of it's opinionated. And I'm also a firm believer that I'm not going to try to please everybody, and I'm just going to be who I am. And if Sevan wants my opinion on something, I'll give it. But at the same time, I don't like being unduly, like, mean or negative.
You're not going to be clickbait. You're not going to,
I'm not saying, oh, I think I gave some honest assessment, or at least some, I believe I verbalized kind of some disbelief at his performance, Chandler specifically his performance at Granite Games, and unsure about the Ben Bergeron thing. I don't think it's a secret that I question some of the comp train stuff. Maybe not I don't really follow the programming or know the programming much, but definitely I'm a big believer that movement efficiency is, like, one of the greatest weapons you can have as an athlete, and it's something that can come a lot quicker and a lot faster than a lot of other things. Aside from technique's a big part of movement efficiency, but gaining raw strength or gaining a gymnastic skill, that takes time, but you can improve movement efficiency and technique pretty quickly with a lot of practice. And so I sometimes question when I see an athlete at whatever training camp and their movement efficiency hasn't changed at all over a few years, when that's, seemingly it's like, oh, we don't need to work on that, we just need to get stronger. But then you look at athletes like Matt and Rich, and they are the best to ever do it. They're also the most efficient movers. So I just wonder why people like I question things like that.
Yeah.
So specifically with Chandler's front rack, I think specifically could be better. And I wonder, and I don't know. And this is all speculative. He could work on it every day and it just doesn't improve. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But things like that, I'm not scared to vocalize, but I'm also not going to be like, oh, he sucks, because no one at that level sucks.
Yeah.
And it could be anything. He could have been sick. He could have had COVID, whatever the case may be. You just never know.
Yeah, he did all right at CanWest. He won that, so
he won it. Yeah. There were only 17 guys in the field, which is important, and I think 4 of them were relevant. But
5. Well,
5.
4.5. Adam Davidson just had a baby, so that probably pushes them out
Adam Davidson a little bit. Was he in 5th or 6th?
I think, or 6th. I think.
Okay.
But he also shared a story like yesterday of him, like, comforting his newborn in between, like, at the line of workout. So fuck that. Okay. Well, we're going to get on to CrossFit and stuff, but before I do, so I've said this to Hiller and I've said it to a couple of others, but I think the combination of any combination of Hiller, Brian Friend, JRU, and Sevan, or any of those four and Sevan is just genius. I think it works really, really well. I think you're all really good at what you do. Like you are, you need to keep interrupting people, and you need to keep you need to just keep doing it the same way that you are doing it. Like I think saying, "Oh, I interrupt too much," like fuck that. Like some people just need to be interrupted when there's something good to be said. But I think you're very funny. I think that's and one of the things that I really like about you is that you laugh at yourself. So like your semi-finals t-shirts are a testament to that. But also like I've seen you mid-episode laughing at a comment that's taking the piss out of you in the comments on the live stream, and I think that's it's because I've also seen Hopper stare at the screen for 5 minutes, like not answering Savan when he's asking him a question because he's reading the comments, and he'd be like, "Hey, this guy fucking," like like getting hung up on it. But yeah, I think the group that you have is fantastic. I think it's funny because sometimes when I'm talking to athletes, I think of, say, myself in my gym, and then the best person in my gym and the gap between us, and then the best person in my gym and the best person in my country and the gap between them, and then the best person in my country and the best person in the region and the gap, and so on and so forth. And it kind of gets to the point where it's like, it must get to like, what the fuck is the point in competing at some stage where you're just like, they're exponentially better than I am or whatever. And I get that sometimes with Sevan, where it's like, there's at least a show every day. And like say recently, I was looking at my own lineup, like between now and the games, and I was kind of like, okay, yeah, no, I'm happy with this. I've got like, Boz is on on Wednesday, you're on Friday, or today. I've got like Justin Berg is coming up. I was like, this is looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this. And then I went on to YouTube and I clicked on Sevan's to see. I was going to watch his one with Hiller from the other day, and it was like upcoming streams. And I was like, Cara Saunders, can't get her. Haley Adams, can't get her. I was just seeing a list of people I can't get, and I was like, this is what it's like to turn up at semifinals where you didn't think you'd make it to semifinals, and then you see the person coming first, and you're like, wow, there's a bit of a gap here. But yeah, no, I think what you guys are doing is just it's brilliant, and I think the way you say it's not like 60 minutes. It's like Lauren Khalil is good, and the Morning Chalk Up, the bottom line is good, but you can only watch so much. Like serious
of that boring,
like just serious conversation about like the issues and stuff. And I think like, she's great at what she does, and Brian is great at it and stuff, and they get amazing guests, like ridiculously good guests. But I just think I wouldn't be talking to you now if I hadn't heard Sevan talk to you about like when you were growing up and stuff, and I hadn't been like, fuck, I really like this guy, this is a really good story. So yeah, I think there's enough room for everyone, really. I kind of lost my train of thought there in the middle of that. When you called Morning Chalk Up boring, I was like, oh, should I defend that?
I don't mean it in a that's kind of one that, there we go. We were just talking about me not being
you didn't hold back on talking elite recently either.
No, I didn't. I'm opinionated. I don't think I'm not not in a negative way. It's just there's not a lot of flavor to that stuff. It's talking about the data, it's talking about the athletes, and I'm not a I don't watch a lot of ESPN. I don't want to watch a lot of that. I watch a lot of Joe Rogan because there's a lot of authenticity, and they get sidetracked and they get opinionated. To some degree, people's opinions aren't very important, but to another degree, it's nice to know how somebody thinks about things and why they think that way.
Well, that's how most people form opinions, is they listen to other people's opinions and then they say, yes, I agree with that, or no, I agree with this one. Whereas if you're just listening to, and I don't mean any disrespect to anyone, each to their own, I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum, like whatever you want to listen to. But I think if you're listening to two people just say like, oh, it's bad, but it's not that bad, or it's good, but it's not that good, or everything's rosy, or everything's fine, or everything's A-okay, then it's kind of like, well, nobody's forming anything about anything. Everyone's just kind of like standing with their hands in their pockets, like nodding, and nothing's happening. If Sevan asked you to go on and talk about like Phil Toon getting popped or Danielle Brandon moving training camp, would you be like, no thanks, that's not the kind of stuff I want to talk about? Or would you be like, yeah, no problem?
I would go on. Man, I have strong opinions about both those things. And that's where it gets delicate. I don't want to make enemies in the space because for all intents and purposes, compared to a lot of people, I'm a nobody. But at the same time, I think what matters more than anything in life is your character. And I'm a firm believer in that. At the same time, I have a great awareness of myself and how imperfect I am and how messy my past is personally. And so I don't look at someone who makes a mistake and I don't write them off. But at the same time, I grew to that level of self-awareness by having people around me who were highly critical of my actions and stuff. Yeah. And so, yeah, I would get on, and if he asked my opinion about the questions, I would for sure share it.
Okay.
I'm nervous about, any question you ask me, you'll get my honest opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't want to get you into trouble either. We'll circle back. So are you religious then? Is the 12 steps, is that a religious thing, or is there an aspect of religion to it?
It's an aspect of spirituality. And so
it's not like Catholicism, it's like just general.
Yeah. Okay. It's in the 12 steps of any 12-step program. It uses the term higher power, not God, not Allah or Yahweh or anything like that. It's just a higher power of your own understanding is what it says specifically. So it's a spiritual program. And a lot of people confuse that with religion and religiosity and you have to do this and have to do that. But kind of the 12 steps are based on, they call them suggestions, and it's based on suggestions. You don't have to do anything. What makes it so powerful is you go to a meeting or you are surrounded by others who have practiced the 12 steps and you see the level of happiness and joy and freedom that they experience, at least when you're new or you're early on in recovery, and you're like, oh my God, I could never imagine feeling that way. And when you ask them how have they done it, and they give you these suggestions, if you're at a place where you're willing to try anything to feel differently, something as seemingly insignificant as quote unquote surrendering, control over your own life or whatever control you think you have over your own life to something greater. When you're fresh off the streets or newly sober, you're like, what the fuck does this have to do with me staying sober? But you just listen to somebody else who's done it and who has experienced or has things that you would like, and things fall into place. And so there's suggestions to spiritual program. There's nothing, and then at the same time, it's like every meeting you go to is different, and the 12 steps are practiced a little differently everywhere, and each group has its own flavor. And I was lucky when I got sober because I met with some guys in a group and some young people who were very open-minded and patient, and there are a lot of groups who don't have patience. And there is a tradition in the 12 steps where, you don't break anonymity in a public setting. And granted, things like that were written in the 30s and the 20s. And so it's hard to imagine they expected the world to be the way it is today. But that's just to say that I'm not a prime example of sobriety. So if somebody's listening to this and thinking about getting sober, and if something I say about the 12 steps turn you off, don't listen to what I'm saying. Just give it a try. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be an example of.
And did you have a sponsor then? Is there a one-to-one aspect?
One-to-one aspect, meaning I have a sponsor or two sponsors, or
like is that how it works? Is there like a person that you call if you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna have a wobble?
Yeah, for sure. Have a sponsor.
And have you ever done that for anyone else?
Yeah, I have. I've done that for several people, and I've had several sponsors, and I've gone through the 12 steps several times. And that's you have one sponsor typically.
Is it stressful being someone else's? Because obviously when someone is your sponsor, it's a bit more like you're leaning on someone and you're able, whereas is it more difficult when someone else is calling you in the middle of the night or whatever?
It's harder to sponsor someone than it is to be sponsored.
Mm.
Of course, I think at the same time, it's not that hard though. The hardest part about it is when I'm, obsessing over my own life or my own self in day-to-day living, and I get a call from someone else. The hardest part is just hitting the green button and not being like, fuck that, I don't want to deal with that right now. As
Yeah.
fucked up as that is to say, everyone has that feeling. You're like, I got better shit to do right now, but then you hit the green button and you feel a lot better after helping somebody else with their own shit. It gets you out of yourself.
You mentioned earlier on that you train with Hopper, and that you did, like say, last year and in the lead up to semifinals and stuff last year. Can you remember when you started doing CrossFit, can you remember a time where you were like, oh fuck, I'm actually really good at this, or I have the potential to be really good at this?
Pretty early on, I've had people that say maybe I could make it to regionals. I think I started in 2017, and like in 2018, some people in my gym were like, "Yeah, you maybe could make it to regionals." And I remember having a conversation with the owners of the gym I was at the time about how do I get competitive? Like, who coaches? Who do I seek out as a coach? Like, I'm pretty, I fucking hate it too when athletes say that. Everyone says it. Like, I'm broke, I can't afford a coach, and how much do I train, and do I need to gain weight? And I was so clueless. I just needed to do CrossFit more, and I started doing it more. And then I fell into a group of people who are pretty cool and helped me along the way.
And is it nice? You mentioned there that you don't say, like, specifically this year, I suppose, when you're injured, you don't really like seeing people doing well. Not that you wanted to see doing badly, but you don't like to see them being where you want to be. So, like, say last year when Hopper won Mac and, like, was being lauded as the next challenger and stuff, are you like, fuck this, like, or are you thrilled that someone that you're training with is there?
I was very happy for him. It also, I felt like, put a lot of pressure on me because I know that I can beat him. And he'll admit that too. We're both really good, and that put a lot of pressure on me. And I come from a background with not a lot of competitive experience in anything, but played a lot of sports, but never the investment in those sports where there was any sort of pressure to do well. So I felt like just a lot of toxic pressure leading into Granite Games, and it didn't help me out at all. So it was in a negative way. I kind of looked at that and was like, damn, if he can beat all of them, like, fuck, I should win. I have to win.
Yeah.
And that was not a great mindset going into my first major, competition where I had a lot of pressure on myself.
What was it like going into Wadapalooza?
There was no pressure there. I was actually dealing with this knee injury, and had tweaked it a couple weeks before that. And so I wasn't squatting going in. I couldn't squat. And so I was lucky enough to get an invite. And there was, before I tweaked my knee, I was really excited and fired up and had a lot of pressure and felt like I could do really well. And then I tweaked my knee and I was like, well, I can't fucking squat going in. So I guess we'll see how this goes. And my kind of goals shifted from trying to be on the podium to just getting out of it healthy. And that was kind of my main mental attitude or approach in that competition, was just to get out healthy. And
Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it more with that kind of goal rather than like, I need to do really well?
I think I would have enjoyed it more with the pressure to do really well and feeling healthy, rather than nervous that I was not going to get out healthy. I think I lived with that pressure or fear of not being healthy through most of the year, early fall, leading up to the Open, Wadapalooza, quarterfinals, semifinals. And that's not a fun place to be as a competitor, in doubt of your health and whether or not you're going to be able to hold it together.
And did you know, like, that there was a chance that this could happen and you were continuing anyway? Or did you think like, oh no, it should be okay, it should hold up? Because obviously, I suppose, like, if you tweak your knee and you're kind of like, and you've done this before, haven't you? The same injury. So are you like, oh, that's what happened 6 weeks before last time? Or like, is there any of those kind of thoughts? And you're just like, fuck it, like, power through, it'll be fine.
I wouldn't say there was a fuck it mentality, but I definitely knew that there was a possibility. I had a really bad skateboarding injury in 2019. I had like a knee reconstruction done, And it wasn't just ACL, it was a lot of things. And after that surgery, there were a lot of things fucked up in my knee. And it didn't feel good until really like 6 to 8 weeks leading up to Granite Games in last year's semifinals. That was like the first time I could do like an actual strength cycle without like having to back off of certain things. And then after Granite Games, I did the last chance. And then I pulled my hamstring in Aromas, and that I think is when I retore the ACL in that knee.
Was that in games testing?
And so I think throughout the year, I knew that at times it could be really healthy, and I knew that some things volume-wise tweaked it, but at the same time, it seemed so volatile, and like just like one thing could hurt it, and another thing that I thought would hurt it wouldn't. And I played around a lot with my coach with volume of certain things and frequency of certain movements. And to be honest, nothing really made that much of a difference aside from a lot of the PT I was doing that was allowing me to continue to train. So I lived with that knowledge in the back of my mind that, potentially things could go poorly at the wrong time. And I wanted to compete anyways. I was really scared and nervous for another surgery because my surgeon in 2019 didn't do a good job, and he told me the surgery didn't go well, which was
exactly what you want to hear when you're waking up from your anesthetic.
Yeah. Man, that wasn't fun hearing that. At the same time, it was a really bad injury.
Do you take anesthetic when you're having that surgery though?
Yeah, I was under anesthesia, but neither of the surgeries none of the surgeries I've undergone have I taken any painkillers. And the one in 2019 was very painful. There was a lot of bone. Yeah. It was an ACL, like a regular ACL where they do like a hamstring graft or something like that is not very painful. But I had a patellar graft that time where they take part of your kneecap and your tibia. So there's a lot of bone there. I also had a lot of bone damage from the injury itself that they were kind of correcting. And that was fucked up. Like that surgery hurt so fucking bad. And I was really nervous for this one. One, A, for it to hurt that bad. B, I was like, why am I going to get surgery if I'm just going to feel like shit for a year afterward? But I got this surgery and it didn't hurt at all.
That's good.
Yeah, it was extremely successful. So I have confidence that it'll get better. But a lot of that last year, I competed with that fear of being healthy. And I fucking am so sick of that.
And what stage of recovery are you at now? Like, where are you in terms of like, are you like, load bearing? Are you like?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty ambulatory. I can do, it was a 2-part procedure. The first part was to remove hardware and do a bone graft of the tunnels that they use to mount your new ACL, because the tunnels from the prior surgery were like widened and unusable. So they had to fill those holes in with like new bone, and then take out. I actually have let me pull this picture up of the shit they took out of my knee from that prior surgery. And the surgeon I have this time is a fucking rock star, and I'm very grateful for him. I don't know if you can see all of that on the gauze. All of that was inside of my knee, like the screws, the sutures, the pieces of bone, all that. Yeah,
the big screw looked like it's from just a hardware shop. Like it's
I know. The white thread was like wound around the ACL graft that they used to quote unquote beef it up. It was just it was a fucked up. Like you would think, looking at that I like got the surgery in Tijuana for like $30.
I was gonna say, it was like, was it some kind of like disqualified vet that did it?
No, I know. He's a very good surgeon and highly touted in the DC area. But it was just, again, it was a bad situation. But no, I'm doing a lot right now. And then I think in 2 months or so, I'll have the actual ACL surgery. So right now I don't have an ACL in the knee. So I wear the brace for like certain activities. Like I went on a pretty long hike on Saturday up a mountain. And so I wore a brace for that just because it's like, walking over rocks and shit. When I'm doing PT, I don't wear a brace. Walking around, coaching, walk around the house, I don't wear a brace. It feels about as stable as it did before the surgery, which tells me that my ACL for sure was not there.
Yeah.
But I also don't have pain. The swelling's gone. I have a lot of strength, quad control, all that stuff.
Wow.
Good range of motion for where I'm at.
Yeah, imagine having no ACL and feeling like this actually feels about the same as before I had the surgery.
Yeah, that's so I know it needed to be fixed and that was
Yeah.
fucked up. And I have a lot more confidence after this surgery because I didn't take ibuprofen. Like 3 days after surgery, I stopped taking ibuprofen. It didn't hurt that enough for me to justify taking it, I guess. There was an anti-inflammatory effect, but I was able to get the inflammation, the swelling down pretty quick. And it should be the same for the next surgery. It's not really any more traumatic. And luckily the one graft left that I can do, because I haven't had it done yet, is the best one, the quad tendon. So they'll take a piece of my quad tendon, and I have strong quads, so the tendon presumably is extremely strong, and that'll be a great.
And what's your timeline then for, like, when do you think, like, will you be ready for next season?
It's really hard to say. I'm saying no. I'm not going to try to be ready for next season. I think when I had the surgery in 2019, I rushed it so hard.
Does it baffle you then when you see people like Brooke Wells, or like my father-in-law is a radiologist, and we were watching semi-finals, and he was like, this isn't possible. Like, he was like, the science tells you that this isn't possible. Like, when you see stuff like that, or like Sarah getting back to semi-finals this year, are you like inspired by it, or are you like, this is ridiculous, I'm gonna wait another year?
It's a little bit of both. Science says it isn't possible, and I think a lot of these athletes that come back quick, myself included. I mean, for my surgery in 2019, when I had that, and then qualifying for Granite Games and whatnot, was too soon. And I think the best athletes in the world, are so athletic. I think what makes just a raw athlete that's better than someone else, or what makes someone more athletic than someone else, is their ability to adapt to certain things. Like, your just ability to adapt. And that's also in the realm of adapting to injuries. And I think Brooke and Sarah are so athletic that they can compensate for that stuff. And I don't necessarily think it's the best idea to try to come back too soon, but at the same time, it's your life, and that's all you're thinking about and all you're concerned with. And sometimes you get wrapped up, and that's all your self-worth. And it's hard not to want to get back out there immediately. And I feel like my biggest area, some of the most growth I've experienced this go around, is just being patient and realizing, if I'm healthy, realistically, I compete through my mid-30s or early 30s. And if I'm not healthy, I can't compete at all. So why am I going to try to rush myself to compete when I'm 27 versus being healthy and competing while I'm 28, 29, 30, 31, 32? And that's also hard, because you get the messages and people are like, man, can't wait to see you out there next year. And you're like, fuck, I want to be out there next year. But at the same time, I also know what it's like to just live in this constant fucking cesspool of fear of, like, man, is this going to hold up? And like, Wadapalooza is a perfect example of what I can do when I'm confident in an event, and then what happens when I'm not confident in an event. Like, I had a second and a first, and then I had a 32nd and a 31st. And those two events it's not that I'm not strong or not good at that. It's that it's a 21:59 workout, and I'm thinking, man, I just don't want to hurt my knee. And you can't approach a 21:59 workout scared or timid. And then there's an event like the flip sled or the run swim, and with no ACL, you shouldn't be able to run very well or swim very well. But I have confidence in those movements and know I'm really good at them. Same with the flip sled and the GHC and stuff like that. And so my hope is that I get my leg healthy and have that confidence in all of my movement.
Maybe like Can West next year. A smaller field of 17 with 5 relevant sounds about good in summer.
Maybe, but also, I'm not sure for me. I think, I don't know. Yeah, maybe, potentially. I'm not going to put any pressure on myself to compete. I think that being healthy and I would be better off to be fully healthy going into a semifinal with no competitive experience in the past year and a half, than not being so healthy and having a little competitive experience. I know what it's like to be scared in the corral or nervous in the corral.
Yeah. Or
How do you
Filthy
think?
150. That would be like next September, and you've a bit of Irish in you, don't you?
Yeah, a lot. Scotch-Irish, Scots-Irish.
So that could be a perfect marriage of,
That would be cool.
yeah.
I've always wanted to go to Ireland too.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. You can have our spare room. Okay, so you've kind of pushed your programming and coaching. Is that off the back of like, well, I'm going to have all this time, I need to have like income, and I need to use my time, and I need to be productive? Is that what spawned that?
Yeah, 100%. One is like I needed something to do, and I love CrossFit, and so I kind of went out on a limb with the programming thing. I'm definitely very fortunate for Sevan, because without him, my name wouldn't really be out there at all, and I'm not sure how much success I would have. So that has helped a lot. But yeah, just I need to fill the time, but also something I know I've wanted to do, and not necessarily sure that waiting for any more recognition is worth it. I know that I know a lot about CrossFit, and I know a lot about programming, and I know a lot about working out. I have a lot of credentials. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to get it going and do it.
And it sounds like it's been successful, yeah.
Yeah. Depending on how you look at it, for sure. I've had success. It's still so new, and it stresses me out, like getting new people on, retaining people. I use Instagram, like a private Instagram page, as the delivery platform, because things like True Coach and all that are pretty expensive, and I'm not at the point where I feel like I want to pay for that. And at the same time, I'm offering, like I'm coaching the people who are on my program. And, it's not like one-on-one individualized programming. It's a template program, but I tell people like, hey, if you have a lift and you're unsure about it, let's send it to the DM, and I'll coach you up on your lift or your gymnastics, or ask questions about the workout or scaling or all that. And I feel like it's an easy place that people are already on Instagram all the time. So it's an easy place to get the workout, communicate with people on the program and me.
Yeah. I'm just writing down things that I want to talk to you about off mic that you're reminding me of. Okay. Did the age group online qualifiers and the last chance qualifier get you pumped for CrossFit Games programming? Because I got the sense during the Open and during quarterfinals and during semifinals, you were a bit like, this is shit. And then during last chance and age group, you were like, this is fucking dope.
Yeah, they were great. They for sure got me excited. I haven't had a lot of time to think about the CrossFit Games programming and what it's going to look like this year. But I initially, like with the Open and with quarterfinals and with semifinals, I was like, well, I'm not really that sure that the games are going to be. I just don't know what they're going to look like, and not really nervous, but also not like super excited. And then semifinals and the age group qualifier happened, and those workouts were great and really cool and creative. And I'm definitely excited for the games now. So I would say it flipped the excitement switch for sure.
Boz was saying, so he gave me fucking nothing. I was like, I'm going to ask all the questions anyway, but you can just say no, and he was like, I can't. Actually, one of the things that I was kind of like, oh, that just means you're going to announce it on something else. He was like, I cannot announce that on your podcast. And I was like, did he emphasize the word "your" there? Did he say, was there a cut there in the word? Was he like, I can't announce that on your podcast? And then I was like, yeah, maybe I'm imagining it. But he said that there's going to be, he said this on the games one as well, and he reiterated it, but I thought he expanded on it a bit, where he said there's going to be a workout that everyone can do, and he had said that to Chase, and I took that as meaning like people watching at home can do it. But what he said to me was, no, everyone is doing that workout, like the 65 plus, the 16s, the elite field are all going to do the same workout, and then they'll be able to directly compare themselves to everyone.
That's pretty cool.
And then he was like, and also, you are correct, people at home will also be able to do it. So it sounds to me like it's going to be like, I don't know, like it has to be something accessible.
It reminds me of last year, the run toe to bar run sandwich. It was the 1.5 mile run, 30 toes to bar, 1.5 mile run, 30 toes to bar, or something, or 30, yeah, whatever. 30 mile run, 30 mile run, 30. Yeah. That's a workout everyone can do, or even something as simple as I'm sure he means a CrossFit workout, but everyone can do a 1RM snatch, or most people can. Everyone can run 550 yards.
I thought Fran straight away.
Yeah, maybe. I don't see them doing Fran. I think it'll be creative, but like you said, accessible. Like I think that mile run toe to bar, or mile and a half run toe to bar couplet was really accessible and cool.
He also said that everyone's going to use new equipment. So he said that there's going to be like, like say the cheese curd, but like that the teenagers will use it. That it won't just be the elite male and female. That like all the age groups will have an opportunity to use the new equipment. I thought that was cool as well.
Maybe they'll rock climb. I've been imagining that as like an event where they have speed climbing walls set up with the same course. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, would they really give Laura Horvath that much of an advantage when they don't give her any screen time?
Well, you're right. You're right. There's that to think about, but then you think about the advantage people like Janikowski get on a swim, or Tia on a swim, or true. Olympic weightlifters on a snatch. But
have you got like a thing in your head of, because you're a fan of the sport and then you're obviously in the sport, do you have a picture in your head of, say, in 2025 what you would like the CrossFit Games to look like, and is it vastly different, do you think, from what it's going to look like in 2022?
I don't think I have a picture of what I want the games to look like. I think more than anything I have visualizations or plans or ideas or hopes for what my situation looks like in 2025. I think my only hope for the sport is that it grows to the point to where the athletes are compensated. I guess not necessarily with, I don't think the word fair is what I'm looking for, but the athletes work really hard. A lot of them work really hard, and I hope the sport grows to the point and the fan base grows to the point to where they can support the athletes that are working really hard to get there. My hope is that it doesn't turn into some sort of Olympic sport where one out of the 500 trying to compete can earn a living and the rest of them are fucking broke for the amount of work it takes to get there. That just seems stupid. Especially when you have a sport like golf where so many of the competitors can have so much money. Or the NFL, with a base salary. It would be nice to see the sport grow to that degree.
Yeah. Who do you think is going to finish top 3, men and women?
I think Medeiros, Vellner, and
Brent.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to say that. I think Saxon's probably on the podium this year with a threat and potential to win. I think Pat, always has the potential to win, and it seems like he makes a mistake or a costly mistake that keeps him far back.
My prediction is that Pat wins and retires.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Or Brent wins and retires. One of them will win and one of them will retire.
I like Pat out of any competitors in the sport, personality wise, just as like human beings, and I don't know either of them very well, but I feel like I like Pat and Brent the most, which is strange because they're both, very different from me. But they're both pretty authentic and they don't really care a whole lot what other people think about them. And I value that a lot. And you can kind of tell that with the way they carry themselves. And I appreciate that a lot. And
what about Guy and Roman?
I don't know Roman very well, but how they do. Yeah, potentially do well.
I mean, you can discuss their character if you want, but
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know their character enough to discuss that. He's really young, and Roman doesn't speak English, so I don't know shit about him. I think they're both home run hitters in some degrees, and I'm not really aware of big limitations on Roman's part. On the contrary, with Guy in the past, his engine has been a limiter. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing you're going to improve with Mayhem,
Yeah.
You know,
You would think, yeah.
Engine and GHDs. They're the two.
Yeah, you would think. I think some of the monostructural stuff potentially might continue to. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. It's hard to be so good at one thing, and to be so bad at another thing, and to level those out. So we'll just have to see how he's done that. You know, the people who are best at that win.
Women, then, what do you think about the women?
Tia for sure, and I think Cara Saunders.
Oh.
Potentially on the podium. She's really, really good. Laura Horvath, too, is really, really good. I think Haley Adams will be knocking at the door. And it'll also kind of depend on the programming. In the past, the games have a lot of running, and Haley does. I mean, I don't want to say Haley does well because there's a lot of running, but the games programming is just different than it is at in the Open and in the semifinal. It allows people who can adapt really well to do well.
Yeah, I kind of think it's Tia. I think Tia will win and then she'll retire. And I think Laura will finish second and Gabby Magala will finish third.
Yeah, Gabby's a good pick too.
I actually don't think. I think Haley and Mal will be the only Americans inside
in the top 10.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, Danielle Brandon's a threat, maybe.
There's so much has happened there that it's kind of like it could go one or two ways. It could be like, oh, I've got a real fire in my belly and I'm going to do great, or it could be like the wheels are going to come off.
Yeah, she's. The thing about her is she's so athletic.
I just anytime like that adversity, the pressure case diamonds and that kind of stuff, and just every so often when I think about her, my mind flicks back to West Coast Classic when the dumbbell was slipping.
Oh yeah, yep.
And it's just kind of like how much work has been done on that, and like she's incredible and she's amazing and she's she's phenomenal and she's improved exponentially as far as I can tell. But it's kind of like, I don't know, sometimes I just think when stuff like that happens and it's going on under the surface and you don't even realize yourself that it's going on under the surface, and then a crack comes and it just falls apart. And I think that would be my concern for her.
Yeah, that's a concern for a lot of people. Jason in his rookie year had that to a degree. A lot of athletes do, I think. And at the same time, it's something that's trainable, just like everything else. I'd be surprised if she's worked very hard on it. No offense. It just seems like something that a certain type of person wants to work on and seeks that out, and other certain types of people don't necessarily seek it out until they're forced to. So we'll see how she does this year. And yeah, it is definitely a big change going from, I think, more so from necessarily just switching coaches in the camp, but kind of the emotional turmoil and the interpersonal turmoil surrounding that type of stuff is probably a bigger stressor than the actual workouts and day-to-day stuff itself, if that makes sense.
Who's your coach?
His name's John Main, and he's a level 4 out of San Diego. I don't know if you're familiar with Christy Phillips Atkins. She's a long time games athlete in the Latondra era, Rich Froning era, an 8-time individual athlete. And he was her coach for her career. And I met him through her. She worked out at CrossFit Reston. And I trained with her early on and met him through her.
How long have you been with him?
Since I started even trying to compete. So like 2018.
Okay. If there was a problem, say you were gearing up for the games and there was a problem.
With me and him.
Yeah, from either end. So from you, we'll do two hypotheticals. So you have a problem with him. Do you just bury it and just say like, I'll sort it out in August? Or if there's a problem on the option B, then there's a problem between you and him and the problem is with you, as in he has a problem with you. Do you alter your behavior until August and then solve it? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it more detrimental to do what Danielle has done or to wait and bury it for another 2 months?
That's a great question. I think in the realm of hypotheticals, the only issues I could see arising from me or John are character issues where, I have made an agreement with him that I'm not keeping, or he's made an agreement with me that he's not keeping. And we are both, I just don't see that happening. Like if you were to coach another individual male, I probably wouldn't want him to be my coach anymore.
What would you do if he took someone on in like June?
Yeah, I would be like, hey, or he would run that by me for sure. One, he wouldn't do it. So me and him are extremely close. He wouldn't take another individual male on, without talking to me about it. And if he would talk to me about it, I'd be like, no, I'm not fucking down with that. And at the same time, if I was doing something like we've had points where I'm not being consistent and sticking to the program and adding too much of my own stuff and having repercussions from it. And he's like, dude, you need to fucking stop doing that. And having hard conversations with each other. And we've had a lot of hard conversations with each other. I feel like I've had less to complain about him than he has to complain about with me, but not necessarily to complain, but things to learn. He's got so much experience coaching at the games. And training an athlete for the games. And we were both very communicative with one another and very transparent with one another and very trusting with one another. I give him, we have a lot of feedback. It's not like some one-sided coaching relationship. We talk a whole lot and we discuss like options and what's best. And we're really close. And so but at the same time, if something did arise, I'm not the kind of person who believes that waiting is best. I think when that shit sits and festers, it occupies way more space in your brain than it needs to. When as you just get it off your chest and fuck whatever the consequences for that are, just get it off your chest.
Are you surprised at the level of people testing positive?
That's a hard question to answer, whether I'm surprised or not. It shocks me every time I see a big name test positive.
Yeah.
Because I know how much work it takes, and I know the lengths that I'm willing to go. I'm willing to work like I can't imagine. There's no ounce of who I am where there's like, you need to work a little bit harder. I'm like, I'm not willing to do that. Like, I'm willing to work as hard as it takes to make it. And I'm so unwilling to compromise on what I believe to be the right way to do it. And that is obviously to not cheat and to not take performance enhancing drugs, and to not cheat your reps and to not, cheat your equipment in like online qualifiers or whatever. So like learning that people do that intentionally was I was like, whoa, I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
So I was doing the 2021 Open, and one of my friends was talking to me about how it annoys him when people cheat. I was like, people cheat in the Open? I was just so naive. And that's really weird because I come from a background of like crime kind of. So surprised, like, I guess I just don't think about it a lot. I don't think about PEDs. The most I ever think about is like, is this supplement NSF certified? Because that's a fucking nightmare to imagine. Like, so many people use that excuse, tainted supplements. And that scares the fuck out of people who do the right thing and take things just like creatine or like fucking C4 Sport or Optimum Nutrition Whey. It's like, oh my God, is this made in fucking tainted beef whey protein? So like, other than that, I just take supplements that have the NSF check. Like,
did you see Tim Poulsen yesterday put up a thing saying that he's not taking? That is fucking insane. I can't get enough protein without taking protein powder, and I do fuck all.
Yeah, I know. So that's pretty crazy. Pat commented and was like, you must eat all day. And I thought that was pretty funny. I think Ricky mentioned recently that he doesn't take any supplements. Maybe it was on Sevan's podcast that he doesn't take any supplements now. So I don't think it's that crazy. I also don't think it's maybe that necessary to go to that extreme, because I think the tainted supplement argument is also bullshit. If you're just taking normal supplements like fucking creatine and pre-workout and protein, you're like, it's pretty common sense that a company's not going to put some,
just squirt in some
drug. Yeah, some expensive fucking drug that they want you to pay for into your fucking beta alanine or your fucking BCAAs. So I don't know. Back to that question. It's always a shocker because it's not at the forefront of my mind. I'm not thinking about cheating. I'm not thinking about other people cheating. And I honestly, I feel like I just don't think about it that much. And then when somebody does come out and I know them, I want to believe their story and I want to think the best about them. And then, you have some time to think about it and you look at just the entire context of the situation and 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah. It's hard, like say with Phil Toon, I was kind of, because I liked him. Well, I
Mhm.
liked him. I don't really know him, but I liked watching him compete. And then he said that he tested positive, and I was floored by that one.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it's just naivety that I just gave everyone the benefit of the doubt. But I was
Yeah.
like, because other people were like, "Oh, I fucking knew it," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's fucking easy to say that." Like after the fact,
It is
like,
easy to say
I
that.
didn't hear you saying that last week.
Yeah.
Apart from that guy in the Faries, I think pretty much everyone.
Oh my God. Yeah. When he tested positive, no offense. I sent a screenshot to JR and I was like, shocker.
Yeah.
No offense to that guy. I'm going to give that.
He's going back to his day job of being a Bond villain now for an extra.
A Bond villain.
But
He's
yeah,
huge.
like with Phil, I was just like, oh, this is shit. Like, and then he said about the hair growth, which like
Yeah, keeps. That's funny. I looked into keeps when I first started going bald, and I was like, man, you have to take all this stuff. It looks pretty expensive.
Yeah.
My dad was bald his whole life. Fuck it. I'm not going to pay for that. I remember that going through my mind.
But I like, yeah, like, because I originally, and again, I was just like, oh, the poor fucker. Like, he was just trying to improve. Like, okay, yeah, he was stupid. Like, it was, he should have looked into it more. He should have, checked. Like, it's his responsibility. But like, I was like, that's a hard luck story that like he just, whatever. And then like the next day, I saw someone saying like he took a hair transplant, like drug or whatever, brackets, which also suppresses the detection of it. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm an idiot. Like, I was
And
just
then
like,
also, yeah, someone else put like Meemwad made a meme about it, and then I listened to the Hiller and the doctor talk about it, and the doctor talked about that one drug that he had also tested positive for. I believe it was like nandrolone deca or something.
yeah,
And I have a family friend that played in the NFL back in the day, and I was like mentioned it to him because he took steroids in the back in the day in the NFL, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that's the good stuff." And I was like, "Oh wow, so you know what that is?" He was like, "Yeah, everybody's taking that." And I was like, "Wow, that's
yeah. They
that's
don't put that in hair transplant medicine.
exactly." They're not like, why would a company like Keeps have a fucking steroid in their in their fucking hair loss, whatever?
And is it more palatable, say, what Joyal did, coming out and just saying like, oh yeah, because I was telling my wife, I was like, geez, Phil Toon just popped, and she was like, oh wow, and I was like, yeah, like he put up black and white picture saying it's a a poor judgment and whatever. Like Mike Kratos put up a black and white picture saying, I don't know what happened. Like that's what everyone seems to do, is black and white picture, and I don't know, it must have been in the chicken I ate. Whereas he came out and was like, and my wife was like, he said what? Like I was like, and Joyal was on Sevan show, and she's like, oh, what did he say? He said, oh yeah, I took the shit. Like he was just like, yep. Like, is it more palatable that way, or is it like,
Yeah, I think it's a
hard to
whole
listen to
lot.
someone say that?
No, I think it's more. I have more respect for someone that's willing to admit their fault, and they got caught, and they're like, "Yeah, I did that, and it was fucked up." I think, with the Joyal thing, I think I would have liked to have seen. I mean, he definitely showed some remorse. That's not really important in showing remorse, but I also feel like he had some bias in some of the things he was saying on the show, like oh, every athlete looks at these drugs and imagines like how good they could be if only they could take them. And I like when he said something along those lines, not verbatim, but he said something along the lines of every athlete knows if they could take this that they would be so much better. And I've never fucking thought about that. And I know a lot of athletes don't. That being said, I don't have some research to sit here, but things like that. And I do think it was nice to see, it was refreshing to see that from Joyal. I think it's not, it's just the same old shit when somebody comes out with a fucking story. Like, either don't say anything or just, and that's part of also being sober. You do a lot of fucked up things, and to to change your way of living, you have amends that you need to make for the things that you did and to right some wrongs. And so it's a belief of mine that you're just deteriorating your character by hiding the shit you do wrong, and you're improving your character and strengthening your character by admitting your faults and making them right.
Do you think it'll be easier for people to come back, like say Phil and other people to come back because Ricky has done it?
I think anytime somebody paves the way for something that's never been done before, it makes it easier for someone else to do it and look and say, if he can do it, I can do it. I don't know that those athletes will come back. I think Joyal's not going to come back. I think he said that. I think he
basically openly admitted he's not good enough without drugs. So what's his alternative?
Exactly. Which I also think is bullshit. I think if you're that close, the missing link isn't fucking drugs, dude. You could look at Joyal's physical makeup and mine, and you would seemingly genetically he's pretty gifted. So that's just fucking bullshit to think that the missing link is a drug or not. And you hear people like Lance Armstrong talk about the all of the guys in those races were doping, according to him. You don't know how true that is, but you look at how much work that Lance Armstrong put in, and did he really win those 7 Tour de France titles because of a drug? I mean, think of how much has to go right in that grueling fucking race for you to be able to win, and how good you have to be. And I just don't believe that. I don't believe that the missing link for an athlete to be successful is a drug. And I think it's in their head. And I think that's what holds them back more than anything, is their frame of mind.
Well, I think it comes back to what you said earlier on, that you're someone who, if someone says you need to work a little bit harder, you don't say no. And I think that's the separate. There's genetics, there's all that other stuff, but I think what it really comes down to is people who are willing to, just not stop, and who are willing to sacrifice other things. I think that's the. Okay, well, I've circumnavigated Danielle Brandon and Peas without getting you in trouble, so I think that was pretty well done. We'll finish with a quick fire. So they're all either or. So dumbbell or barbell?
Dumbbell.
Cardio or gymnastics?
Wow, both. I like both.
Swim or run?
I like to run.
Okay, Forrest. Squat or bench?
I like squatting.
Ski or row?
It's another tough one. Maybe ski.
Sevan or Hiller?
Sevan.
And listen, thanks for coming on. It's been great to get to talk to you. It's definitely been worth the wait. I really enjoyed it. And best luck with your recovery and your programming, and look forward to seeing you more on Sevan's, I'm sure, in the lead up to the games and beyond. And I'd love to have you back on another time as well.
Dude, thank you, Peter. I appreciate it.